circles, if I was to ask you a couple questions about circles, probably at some point you'd mention that you know something about a radius, you know something about the diameter. So radius and diameter, pretty straightforward ideas here. If we look at this first example here, we're given the radius. This 3 feet is the radius. If I ask you to find the diameter, you'd probably tell me that the diameter is twice the radius. And number 2, they give us the diameter, which is 16 meters. If I was to ask you to find the radius, you'd probably say the radius is going to be half the diameter. We also know the equations of area. Area is pi r squared, probably something you have memorized from earlier on. And circumference, a capital C, is going to have the same variables, pi and r, and it'll also have a 2, but we'll put the 2 out front. We'll just say that's 2 times pi times r. Similarly, we can say since there's a 2 and an r here, and there's a 2 and r here, we can actually substitute the d, the diameter, into this equation, and we have pi d. I think that's kind of funny because it sounds like someone just pied you in the face. So that's kind of funny, they just pied you in the face. These are some formulas that are pretty handy to have. Notice that here we have a radius, we have a diameter, formulas, and you usually pick one based on the information that you have. Keep in mind here that our area formula with the pi r squared, you square the radius, you multiply that by pi. The directions are kind of interesting, kind of something new for us. It does say keep pi in your answers. So for each circle, determine the area, determine the circumference, show all your work, keep pi in your answer. This is kind of an interesting idea that with your calculator, hopefully you're able to do this. It's kind of finding an exact answer. That's another way that some teachers or some books might say this, is find the exact answer. And that just means instead of multiplying by 3.14, multiplying by 3, or multiplying by 3.14159, that you're actually going to find the exact answer. That just leaves the variable pi in the equation. And we'll see that every so often. Again, make sure to use proper units. So I'm given the radius. I'm going to write down the given information. My diameter then is going to be 6 feet. It's just twice the radius. I'll find my area. My area is pi r squared. I'll just write out the formula. That's pi times 3 squared. 3 squared is 9, so I have 9 pi square feet. An interesting idea. Some people are tempted to write pi times 9. It's the idea here that you would write 9x. Since x is a variable, you wouldn't write x times 9. Most people know that you write your variable second. Well, just remember that pi is a variable. It stands for that number, that 3.14159 number. So you don't write it this way. You actually write it afterwards. So 9 pi as opposed to pi 9. So area equals 9 pi square feet is what we have for our area. To find the circumference, since we have our diameter, we can just use the second equation. That's pi d. So that would be 6 pi. And this is actually our answer, 6 pi, and those are just feet. Remember, circumference is just a length. It's very similar to the perimeter of a polygon. So I think of perimeter with a polygon and circumference with a circle. Circumference, circle, polygons have perimeter. Number 2, we have the diameter equals 16 meters. If I found my radius is going to be half of this, which is 8 meters. I'll find my area. I'll put that under the radius. Area equals pi r squared. So that'd be pi times 8 squared. 8 squared is 64, so I have 64 pi square meters. That's my area. Next, for my circumference, I'll write that under the d. Since I have my diameter, I'll just say that's pi d. So in this case, that's going to be 16 pi meters is my circumference. Since number 3 is really similar to number 2, I'll skip it. You could do it if you really want. One thing is you might have some decimals in with your exact answers. Not a huge deal. Next directions say use the given diameter or radius to find the circumference and the area. Sounds pretty familiar, of the circle. Round your answers to the nearest tenth. So you're going to have your calculator. Make sure it's handy and make sure that you know how to use it. If you don't know how to use your calculator, make sure to ask your teacher to help you make sure you can find the decimal representations of your numbers. Number 4 says the diameter is 27 centimeters. I'll divide that by 2 to get 13.5 centimeters. From there, what I'll do is I'll find my circumference. Circumference equals pi d, pied, and that would just be 27 pi. And when I put that in my calculator and I round to my nearest tenth, I'll have 84.8 centimeters. For my area, I'll say area equals pi r squared. That would be pi times 13.5 squared. Some people will put a times sign in there. Some people won't. They'll just put it right up against it. When you put in your calculator, some calculators like you to have a times sign there, and some will let you just put it right next to it. Make sure that you are able to check this, and make sure that you get 572.6 square centimeters. The idea with this is that sometimes you do have to round, so make sure that you are rounding your nearest tenth. Number 5 is really similar, so if you have another diameter problem, refer to number 4. Number 6 gives me a radius. If I wanted to, I can find a diameter, but let me show you how you could work if you don't want to find your diameter. Let's find the area first. Area equals pi r squared. That would be pi times 12.1 squared. I'll simply put that in my calculator just as it's written like that. And for me, I get 459.96. Now if I was to round this, I want to look at this number. That's a 9, so I would round this guy up. Actually, I look at the 6 to see what happens with the 9. The 6 makes the 9 round up to a 0, which makes this round up. So really my answer is 460.0 when I round to my nearest tenth. That's kind of weird. Some teachers will really want you to write that equal 0.0 at the end, and some won't. They don't really mind. For me, I'm just going to write it down because that kind of shows me that I care, and I'm really looking to round to the nearest tenth place. Again, that's going to only give you 2 significant figures here versus 4 significant figures. Not a big deal on how this works depending on how you round, but some people really are persnickety about that. Circumference then is going to be, since I only have my radius, I did not find my diameter, I'll actually use the other equation, which is 2 pi r. Remember, it's either pi times your diameter, or since your diameter is basically a 2 times your radius, you can use pi d or 2 pi r. Since I did not find my diameter, I'll just use this equation. It's just as simple here. We'll have 2 times pi times 12.1. In this case, I'll have 76.0 centimeters when I round to the nearest tenth. Again, there's a little bit of rounding there. Some teachers will want you to have that 0.0, and some really aren't going to worry about it. Number 9 says if a circle has a radius of 10 inches, find the diameter, circumference, and area. Kind of a story problem. They just don't give you the circle. They just expect you to derive this kind of from the word. So I'll write down my known information. My radius equals 10 inches. Quickly, I can find my diameter. Remember, the diameter is twice this, so that'd be 20 inches. That's one answer. Your circumference, I'll just say circumference equals 2 pi r. So that means you'd have 2 times pi times 10. 2 times 10 is 20, so this is going to be 20 pi. And that's your exact answer. If you got a decimal representation, you just take 20 in your calculator and you'd multiply it by pi. And that should give you 62.8 inches. So that's your circumference. Finally, for your area, area equals pi r squared. That's pi times, this would be 10 squared. 10 squared is 100, so that'd be 100 pi. If we put that in our calculator, that'd be 314.2 square inches. Okay. If someone wanted the exact answer, it's located right here. I think it's a good idea to sort of just to simplify one step. Here's my exact answer. Here are the units. If it asks for exact answer, I do have them on here technically. If it wants a rounded answer, that's what I have right there. Number 10, if a circle has a circumference of 24, find the radius and then find the area. A little more complicated here. Circle equals 24. Doesn't give me any units, so maybe I'd assume that it's a U for units. I know that my circumference is 2 pi r, so I'll just substitute in what I know. I know the circumference, I know 2, I know pi, I don't know r, so that's kind of strange. To get r by itself, I'm actually going to divide both sides by 2 pi, and if I'm not careful with this, I could get one of 2 answers. One answer I could get is 37.7, and one answer I could get here is 3.8. Only one of these is right, so we have to kind of figure out what's going on. If I put in my calculator 24 divided by 2 pi, what my calculator does is it actually takes order of operations. It takes 24 divided by 2 to get 12, and it multiplies by pi, which is 37. Is that really what I want to do? It's not. So what I have to do is that when I do this, I say 24 divided by 2. I can again say then divided by pi if I want, and that would give me my 3.8. Or I could take 24 and I could divide it by 2 times pi, and just make sure to put this in parentheses. This is a really tricky step that a lot of people miss, and it doesn't come up all that often that you're doing this, but when this does happen, these answers are vastly different. And it doesn't only affect this part of the problem. Your radius here is 3.8. The next thing that we have to do is we have to use this radius to find our area, so that's going to be a huge problem. So this is something that I would really put a star next to and really kind of watch to make sure that when you divide by more than one number, you either hit divide twice or you divide and use the parentheses. Consequently, if you would have used the formula using the d, pi d, you wouldn't have ran into this problem, because probably you'd find your diameter and you'd divide it by 2 to get the 3.8. Just kind of a tip to put out there. Finding our area, that's going to then give us 3.8 squared. I should probably mention something about squaring a rounded number. Sometimes you want to use the whole number before you round it, which might be 3.7 something, like 3.75 or 3.78, something like that. Beforehand, some teachers will really want you to do this. I don't think it necessarily changes the answer too much in this problem, but in some problems your accuracy is really needed. Again, if there are no units, a lot of teachers will tell you to say units squared or u squared. Lastly, it says a circle has a circumference of 12 pi. A lot of people start panicking when they see that in your answers. So here I have, here's 12 pi. Again, I know that circumference is 2 pi r. So what I'll do is I'll just simply look at this. I could do it this way, and again divide both sides by 2 pi. And when I do this, the pi's cancel. So really all I'm doing is I'm taking 12 divided by 2, which gives me a radius of 6 units, whatever that might be. Similarly, I could have said 12 pi equals pi d. That's another formula that we have. We could just kind of cross out the pi's and we could know that our diameter is then going to be 12 units, whatever that's worth. Finally, finding the area. Area equals pi r squared. That's pi times 6 squared. 36 pi, or when I put that in my calculator, that's going to be 113.1 square units. This is talking about area and circumference of circles, a pretty useful skill for all students to have. Hopefully this works for you. If you are keeping track of a note card, not a bad idea to kind of keep these formulas in mind, maybe write those down somewhere so you can have them remembered.